All right, Sammeli, it's a pleasure to get to do this customer interview with you. You've been a long time customer and now also joined Teamspective as an investor. So nice to get to talk with you. As a background, what would you like to tell about Sievo for someone who hasn't heard about your company and yourself?
Yeah, great pleasure being here, and indeed happy to give this customer interview as a very satisfied customer of Teamspective and now investor as well. When it comes to Sievo, Sievo is a growth company, a SaaS software company focused on selling procurement analytics for large enterprises, and we've grown from a two-guy startup to a stage where we have now more than 300 employees here in Helsinki, but also in Chicago and Bucharest.
Okay, great. So you've been working with Teamspective for more than a year now. What was the original purpose of implementing our services? And what kind of benefits or changes have you seen?
So we are a SaaS company, we are a software company. Our employees and their kind of motivation, but also capabilities is key success factor for Sievo. And of course, therefore, we want to kind of make sure that we know how our employees are feeling, whether they are engaged, whether they are performing, and so forth, both at an employee level, but then also at the manager level. And when we were smaller, and also pre-COVID, 30, 50 people, you still could, let's say, sense and judge that just by walking around and discussing with people and having an open dialogue. But then we grew to 300 people. We started to have 3 different locations. And of course, the whole working life went to a hybrid mode. And at that stage, we realized that there's no way for us to sense organically anymore how our employees feel and whether they are engaged and so forth. And employees, Sievonians being a key success factor, we figured out what we want to do. We did have, let's say, in-house built SharePoint-based solutions which we used to, let's say, gauge employee satisfaction and so forth, and they gave some results. But then we figured out that we want to do it in a way that it's more frequent. We also want to do it in a way that sort of is easier for the employees, Sievonians, to kind of respond, not to get the survey fatigue. And then also we wanted to find something that also gives us benchmarks, because knowing your status is one thing, but being able to benchmark against, let's say, relevant other companies provides you completely new, different perspectives. So that's what was sort of the ask when we started to look at different solutions, and then we found Teamspective and have never regretted since.
That's nice to hear. Thank you. So how do you use it? You're using the Pulse service, but also some other features. And I'd like to hear more about like how executive teams and middle management and then the whole staff is engaging with the system.
Absolutely. And of course, the basic core functionality and where we get currently most of the value is around the Pulse. It's around getting constant input from all Sievonians on number of different questions, but getting it then with such a, let's say, low effort collection process that people actually do respond. So we get great 80-90% response rates because it's easy enough. Then when we get the results, they are being discussed and analyzed at different levels and from different perspectives. Pretty much all of the teams kind of go through their own team-specific results and figure out if there's something which is trending in wrong direction or something where the results are not as good as they should be. That triggers and forces, and let's say, open discussion. Why are we not, let's say, performing well in a metric also? So it's definitely one key input for, let's say, the team level sort of performance. Then at the same time, for our VPs who have, let's say, multiple teams reporting to them, it's a way to kind of understand how the different teams are performing and also provide coaching and challenging for the managers who lead the teams. Your team is not feeling well on the axis XYZ. What can we do to kind of improve the situation? And it also sort of provides a more objective or balanced way for the VPs to assess which teams and which managers are performing or not. And the same happens at the executive level as well. In my role as a CEO, I definitely want to understand overall how we are performing, but that picture typically is quite stable. But when you start to dig down into team level things, you can prompt discussions around, okay, this team is not performing well. What is the intervention we need to do? Is it about the manager? Is it about the people in the team? Is something not wrong in the context that we are providing for this team? So suddenly you are able to focus your efforts on the specific problem areas, whether it's specific teams or whether it's specific sort of dimensions of measurement, instead of, let's say, just having the feeling that not everything is right.
So how do you talk with your VPs? Do you have one-on-ones and then you review the data, or is it in executive team meetings, or both?
Both. So I do have one-on-ones with all of my VPs. We do discuss kind of employee well-being, not every week, but definitely on a monthly basis. And in those discussions, the Pulse service is one of the sort of dimensions that we use in those discussions. We also discuss them on executive team level. Perhaps every second month we go through the results in a more structured way. And then there's specific sort of events when we definitely kind of go through them in more detail. For example, before the growth discussions that we have with all Sievonians, all managers kind of review their team status. We also review it at executive team level. And then also when we have the salary discussion, it's one input for those discussions as well.
Right. So what would be the CEO's role in all of this? Is it like you who forces everyone to look at the data and use that data, or is it more like shared responsibility? How does it work at Sievo?
I haven't had to use any energy to force the process for people. I think this is the data that any responsible manager or VP actually wants to have and is keen to have. So there hasn't been any resistance from our managers or VPs to adopt the tools and use the tools, both because the data is important, both because it's easily accessible. So in that sense, I haven't had to, let's say, burn any calories trying to force the process on the people. Then, of course, in my role, what I do, on a weekly basis, I go through the results, not just high level, but kind of team by team. And if I see something that I find, let's say, alarming, I definitely sort of prompt the VP or the manager in question what is happening. So this provides a mechanism for me to, let's say, intervene to things that I would not know otherwise.
Right. Sounds like you're, and based on my experience as well, you're very data-driven and interested in these things. But how would you encourage some HR decision maker who's struggling to get the rest of the executive team behind a project like this?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's perhaps a bit hard for me to understand, because for me and for us, it's obvious that sort of employees are the key success factor of the company. And if you believe in that, I think quite logically you need to believe that you need to get a kind of good understanding of what is the employee engagement, motivation, and so forth, and you need the data for that. I would assume most of large companies do collect this kind of data in one shape or form. I think what is unique with the Teamspective is the frequency at which you kind of get the data and the ease for the employees to actually answer the surveys. So perhaps my recommendation for the HR who's struggling to convince the CEOs is that this is sort of lean effort that reduces the time used by the organization to respond to surveys, and at the same time provides you much richer data set that you can act upon.
Right. Okay. So you're using weekly surveys. And it's not too much for you.
Yeah, definitely. So it's a weekly surveys, and I think we are using it in a Slack integrated way. And I think the Slack usability is perhaps the killing feature, because that it's the context where people are anyways operating on a daily basis, and then you get this Slack survey and it's like 5 questions, 30 seconds, and you're done answering, and you don't need to switch the context to a different survey tool. It doesn't take 10 minutes, it takes 2 minutes, and I think that really sort of drives the high response rates. And because the questions vary week by week, you can collect, let's say, richer data set, but still require very small attention from a person on a weekly basis. So that's I think what makes it really work well.
Right. So in the very beginning, how much effort did it take from your team or the executive team or HR to implement this service?
The effort that it required from us was close to zero. And again, I'm going back to Slack usability. Those questions just start to appear on Slack. So what we had an information session that we are going to change our do-it-yourself tool to Teamspective. And you'll be seeing these Teamspective questions in Slack. And then please respond to those questions. And that's basically what it took. Then we also had to discuss with employees sort of the data privacy and what information is available for everybody, what is not. But that was probably the only sort of discussion point we had to really communicate for the Sievonians. Otherwise, they would just started responding the Slack surveys.
Right. That's nice to hear. So we've been working together. It's not just you using our service, but you also, your staff interacting with our staff. So what has been your experience regarding that collaboration, our customer support, and also co-development? Because you have been giving us feedback on how we should present some data. So any thoughts and experience?
As a leader of a software company, I know how difficult it's sometimes to kind of get your software developing at the highest pace and really kind of make the innovation. And with that context and understanding, I must say I've been impressed about the speed at which the overall tool has been developing based on our feedback, but also regardless of our feedback, because when you subscribe to a SaaS solution, you of course want to be able to influence the future of the product, but also what you are looking after even more is the innovation that comes from the provider, and the system develops regardless of your input.
Right. All right. So what kind of companies would you then recommend talk to Teamspective or try Teamspective Pulse? Are there some criteria or some places where it definitely does not work? I would recommend Teamspective to any company who believes that, first of all, the employees are a key success factor. If you don't care about the employees, then probably you don't need Teamspective. But if you care about the employees, and if you believe the employees do drive your business success, then you need to somehow collect this kind of data. And I would argue that if you start to have more than 30, 50 employees, then most probably just walking around is not enough, but you need to start to collect the data in a more systematic way. And in that setting, if you believe the employees are a key success factor for your business success, and if you have more than 30, 50 employees, then you need to solve it somehow. And for us, the Teamspective has been the perfect solution. Excellent. So now you also have a new role. You joined Teamspective as an angel investor recently. What made you decide to invest in our company?
So I decided to not only be a customer, but to become an angel investor in Teamspective as well, because I both believed in the product. I have first-hand experience on the value it brings to organizations, but also because I believe in the team very much. The people we've been interacting with have both the right level of ambition, but also the right level of let's say, humbleness to really try to understand the customer needs and develop product around those. So people and product was in such a great shape that I decided that I want to invest, given the chance, I want to invest in the Teamspective as a company as well.
All right. Anything you'd like to add? We're at the end of my list of questions.
No, I think let me think about this. What I'd like to add is we are of course using the Pulse, which is sort of the core fabric and core value that we get out of the Teamspective. Then at the same time, the organizational network analytics has provided new insights. I truly believe that as company grows, one of the challenges is that you start to have these sort of silos between different functions. And to some extent, that's inevitable. As you grow, there will be more and more people, and there will be less and less people who understand the full picture. Even though it's inevitable to some extent, you need to make sure that you mitigate that challenge. And in my head, the only way to really mitigate that is to make sure that you have people who have connections between different functions, between different locations, between different tenure levels, and so forth. And that's something that's very hard to, let's say, map out or understand with, let's say, more traditional survey tools. But now on our surveys, we've been able to really map our organization and understand where we have enough connections and things are okay, and where we don't have enough connections between functions or locations. And then, of course, we can design interventions, rotate people, create new meeting practices, whatever, to kind of increase that connectivity. And this provides us a way to make sure that we don't become siloed, even though we are growing rapidly.
Excellent. That's great insight. Thank you very much, Sammeli. It was a pleasure talking to you, and really looking forward to continuing collaboration.
Likewise, and thanks for the interview, Jaakko.